Giving all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rachakwadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, as well as the men that taught them, and peace and blessings to the 144,000, as well as the rest of the elect. This is Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 1. And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus said the Lord Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth in all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. All right. So this is a prophecy here concerning Russia. All right. A prophecy in which is playing out on the world stage today, even as I speak. All right. Because when you go into verse 2, it says, Son of man, set thy face against Gog. All right. The land of Magog. The Gog is Russia. All right. Magog, that's saying the land, that's saying the land of God. All right. So they actually didn't have to put the of in it. All right. They could have put the land Magog. Gog, the land Magog. That's Russia. All right. It's the water to the apostles, giving that understanding in this whole breakdown. All right. The water to the apostles. All right, double honors indeed. Verse 3. And say, Thus said Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. That's Moscow. All right. And Tubal is Turkey. Modern day Turkey today. Verse 4 says, And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth in all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company, with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. And as you see that situation between Russia and Ukraine, is verse 4 playing out. All right, when the Lord told Gog and Magog he was going to put hooks into his jaws and turn them back, it meant back to the old Soviet Union. All right, we know what, 90 or 91, 1991, that George Bush Sr. has struck a deal with Gorbachev to basically unify Germany, and the deal was that how did it go? Slovakia. Basically that NATO would not go any further into the east, into Russian territory, but effectively it kind of dissolved at that point, the Soviet Union. But the deal was that NATO couldn't go any further. I forget the border back then, but soon as Bill Clinton, I'm saying George Clinton, soon as Bill Clinton got in office, he made Poland a part of NATO, violating the agreement. And so it's been violation after violation with the U.S. and NATO. All right, the U.S. being the woman riding the scarlet colored beast of Revelation 17. They just renege the truce breakers, covenant breakers. This is what they are. This is who they are. This is what they do. Okay, but the Soviet Union was dissolved around the early 90s. All right. And effectively, NATO should have been dissolved too, but it didn't. NATO kept encroaching into the old USSR. So getting back to the scripture, when the Lord said he was going to put hooks into thy jaws, you know, kind of like a bit in a horse's mouth. When you put a hook in somebody's jaw, you could turn them in the direction that you want them to go, in the direction the Lord is going to turn them back to is that old USSR, all right, that Soviet Union spirit, all right, and set them against the West. Because right now you see Putin, he been wanting peace. He been trying to strike deals. He's been, Putin in his own way is, he really puts, I was going to say in his own way, kind of like Trump, but Trump ain't sincere. Putin is sincere about putting Russia first, all right? And so he knows that it's smart. He's a businessman, all right? He's a hell of a politician. But he understands that, you know, he needs, because Russia is kind of isolated, but he needs to do business with the West. So his mindset has been, let's work together. Let's, you know, at least unite on a financial front. And every chance, every turn, the West, at least the U.S., I ain't going to put all the West, but they've been shitting on them on every turn. Well, actually, the video is going to go into it. So I don't want to go too in depth, but just keep that in mind and pay close attention. I got a 7-minute video. And by the way, I'm going into this to get a brother his props. All right. Elder Ariala's video is what inspired this video. And this, you know, my video is in conjunction with his, a lamb back, if you will, to his WW3 algo update. And let you see the title there to your right of your screen. WW3 algo update. Trump/small hats strike Yemen and Gaza. And he went into that whole debacle throughout the Middle East. Well, with what's going on with Israel and the different little factions that's warring right now. I mean, he covers it and puts it all in a nice, neat and concise little 30-minute package, you know, very edifying, very right to the point. And so check that out if you haven't already. But yeah, I just wanted to get a brother his shine, give him his flowers right there, you know. Brothers putting in that work for Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, man. Kal Halal, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Now, I'm going to show you this. Judge Napolitano, Judging Freedom. And he has, as his guest, Colonel Douglas McGregor, all right? And it's a 7-minute video. I'm going to play the majority of it. And this is actually what I'm talking about, that Ezekiel 38 is actually playing out on the world stage as I speak, okay? And it's about to bring the world what's happening with Ukraine and Russia and especially Israel. And Elder Ariala brought this video out. He brought the scripture out that the least of the flock should draw them out. Where is that? Jeremiah 49:20. But we'll get that. All right, because that is going to lead to this third woe. All right, the Ukraine-Russia situation, as well as the Israel and the Middle East situation. All right, because that's going to cause all militaries of the world to converge into the valley of Yahweh Shaphat, you may know as Jehoshaphat, all right, which is the Middle East, that hotbed over there, you know, between Iraq, the Levant, all right, Iraq, Israel, Palestine, that whole area. Shit. Can't think of Afghanistan, all of that, all right, all of that. So, yeah, there's some good points made here. But pay close attention. And without any further ado,
why do you think, Colonel, President Trump unleashed Prime Minister Netanyahu to resume genocide in Gaza, which unfortunately resulted, I say unfortunately, it was intentional, the killing of 400 civilians in the past 2 days?
I don't think he has any choice. I think when he ran for office, he made certain agreements with major donors. These donors move far beyond just Miriam Adelson, and these donors oblige him to effectively underwrite whatever Mr. Netanyahu wants to do. I thought it was interesting that a recent meeting was set up for the United States with Azerbaijan to talk about cooperation with Israel, but it is set up by Mr. Netanyahu. He called and made the arrangements with Mr. Aliyev, who's the president of Azerbaijan. The State Department did not do it. I think we're very much in the grip of the Israel lobby, and I think President Trump is obliged to go along, and I don't see any evidence that he's going to diverge from that path.
Does he have no choice but to back up Israel militarily when it attacks Iran?
I think so. And keep in mind,
just to point out that point, that should be evident, if it isn't already, that Israel lobby, all right, it is heavy. And pretty much, we're a vassal state to Israel, all right? Pretty much. That's how bad it is. And you heard how he said that Trump is indebted to his donors. All right, so that's who he's going to advocate for. All right, so people are going to continue to get slaughtered, both in the East and in the Middle East, Mid-East.
So the possibility that a war is precipitated somehow by Israel somewhere in the region with Iran, the Iranians respond, and the expectation is with the buildup of force in the region, we're sending additional carrier battle groups over there right now. The expectation is that we will reinforce whatever the Israelis want to do. We've already done all of the planning for joint strikes and joint strike packages. We're sharing all of the intelligence with our vast satellite arrays with theirs. So I think it's a foregone conclusion. I can't predict when or how, but I think it's going to happen.
Can you get your hands around the thinking of a human being who wants to do all he can to end the war in Ukraine and bring about a grand reset between the United States, China, Russia, Brazil, and India, but is still stuck on giving Netanyahu all he wants to slaughter innocents in Gaza?
Yeah, I'm afraid I can. I think he tends to compartmentalize. Whereas if you're sitting in Moscow or any of the other capitals that you mentioned, they see no such compartmentalization. They see what's happening in the Middle East as part and parcel of what's been going on in Ukraine. An effort by us and our proxies to undermine them, whether it happens to be Iran or Russia or any of the others that you mentioned.
Let's talk about the so-called agreement that emanated from the 2.5 hour conversation yesterday between President Trump and President Putin. Do you agree that it's unlikely that they spent 2.5 hours talking about bombing Ukrainian infrastructure, and that they probably spoke about many other things as well? Number one. And number two, is this much of a concession by President Putin?
Oh, of course not. It isn't. And we're not going to get any concessions from President Putin on this matter. I think President Trump made the phone call with the hope that he could persuade President Putin to respond positively in some way to the offer of a ceasefire that we had extracted from Zelensky. And I think he got something like that when there was an agreement to not destroy or attack any more energy infrastructure in Ukraine. But keep in mind that just 6 hours later, the Ukrainians struck energy infrastructure in Russia. So under the circumstances, was that meaningful at all? I think the answer is probably no. We need.
And so that's what I was saying earlier. You can't trust this whore and the beast that she sits upon, all right, which is NATO and the EU. And who are the Russians at war with? They're at war with NATO. It's a proxy war with NATO using Ukraine, okay? And so he made a very key point. Yeah, why would Putin want to concede or give concession at this point? All right. And when they did have somewhat of a ceasefire, not even a half a day later, you got Ukraine violating it. All right. And this is what we were saying, because the spirit is not going to let that die down. All right. Why would you ask for a ceasefire and then immediately violate it? And you see how, and it's funny because Elder Ariala spoke, what I'm about to say, he said that concerning Netanyahu. All right, what I'm about to say concerning Zelensky, and that is that a heavy spirit is on him. Now, Ariala used the term demon, and I say that too. It's a demon, a heavy demon on Zelensky, that he's not going to let that situation die down. All right? And Elder Ariala said the same thing concerning Netanyahu. He's not going to let that situation cease. All right? He's hell-bent on event. He wants to go at Iran. All right? He wants all of Palestine, and then he wants to get at Iran. He's hell-bent on that. And Zelensky, which is out of his gorge, I'm sure his life may even be at stake with this, but he's hell-bent on going at war with Russia, or continuing this war, but with the help of the whore. You see? So going back to Ezekiel 38:4, it says, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. All right? So, right, the Lord is not going to let that die down. So he has that demon on Zelensky, and now Putin is like, because they didn't advance so much to where they've achieved victory. All right, victory after victory. And you'll hear, I'm gonna let the colonel continue. But right, why would he stop at this point? So Putin has no reason to stop. And Zelensky has a demon on him that won't let him see that shit. I done lost this thing. I don't have America's support. He's lowered the fighting age because they're low on manpower. And the logical thing to do would be to give up, but he can't, because the Lord is putting hooks into Putin's jaws. Well, Russia, Gog and Magog. All right? And he's turning them back. So, right, Putin is expanding west. And that's that bear coming back together, getting that full strength. And then, well, listen to Douglas McGregor here.
Something.
Let me go back a little
when
bit.
There was an agreement to made the phone call with the hope.
Yeah,
he spoke about
made the phone call with the hope. So your commander-in-chief is running the country on hope, and not even the good kind,
things as well. Number one. And number two, is this much of a concession by President Putin?
Oh, of course not. It isn't, and we're not going to get any concessions from President Putin on this matter. I think President Trump made the phone call with the hope that he could persuade President Putin to respond positively in some way to the offer of a ceasefire that we had extracted from Zelensky. And I think he got something like that when there was an agreement to not destroy or attack any more energy infrastructure in Ukraine. But keep in mind that just 6 hours later, the Ukrainians struck energy infrastructure in Russia. So under the circumstances, was that meaningful at all? And I think the answer is probably no. We need to understand something. There's one important point on which President Putin and President Trump agree, and that is that neither of them, under any circumstances, want a war to break out between us. In other words, both men will do whatever they can to avoid a direct confrontation with each other. That is good news, and we should all be grateful that President Trump is in the White House at the moment and not President Biden, because there was no evidence that President Biden and his administration were really interested in avoiding that kind of conflict. The problem is, how far can we go in terms of admitting that the war is lost, that Putin has won, not Putin, but Russia, that the Russian armed forces are in a position that cannot be effectively attacked by the West, that the Russians can continue to move west if they want to. That's difficult for President Trump to state categorically. And again, it came up that if you really want this to end, President Trump, you've got to stop this flow of military aid and assistance to Ukraine. Not only do you need to stop that, you need to prevail upon your allies to stop it. And thus far, we're seeing a lot of evidence that we have very little influence over our allies. In fact, our so-called allies seem to be determined to chart a separate and distinct path of confrontation with Russia. So this is a very difficult situation. I don't think President Trump alone can solve all of it at this point.
I know it's difficult to try and figure him out because he's often all over the place in what he says and what he does. And maybe the question is unfair, but how can he be asking Vladimir Putin for peace when we are funding a war against him, continuing to fund it, not with cash, but with the same military levels as Joe Biden was?
Judge, you're preaching to the choir on this one. How many times have I been on your show over the last months, probably the last year, and said repeatedly, the most important thing for us to do to signal our seriousness about this is to end aiding Ukrainians, period, and to get all Americans in and out of uniform, intelligence, civilian, whatever, out of Ukraine. That's still what we need to do. If we do that, then I think we can look forward to a useful discussion with the Russians in terms of what we want to do in Ukraine and ultimately across Europe. But until we reach that point, we understand we've got to do it, nothing fundamentally is going to change. And that's the point of the discussion. Over the last 24 hours, the only thing we achieved was to agree to a hockey game. That's, I guess, a morale builder, but that fundamentally changed the facts. I think in the parlance of the neighborhood I grew up in, North Philadelphia, I think Mr. Putin threw Mr. Trump a bone.
So we'll go into that, all right? So there will be no NATO in the Ukraine. Ukraine will be a part of the USSR, all right? Now, getting back to Ezekiel 38 in verse 5, it says, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya, with them, all of them with shield, helmet. Well, let me get 4 again, all right? Let's go back to Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 4. And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth in all thine army, horses and horsemen, all right? And this is what you see, or what you have seen. What is it, 2022, February 2022? If my memory serves me correctly, that's when basically Russia moved on Ukraine. And so that was the beginning of them coming forward. are coming forth, all thine army, horses and horsemen. But that's in preparation. Like that's the beginning of it. All right. Now they're gonna go into the Middle East full force. All right, and this is ultimately what this is going into. All thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, and all of them handling swords. This is talking about, all right, the Russian military getting prepared, coming together, and going forth, all right, to do battle. Verse 5, it says, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet, all right? Persia today is Iran, all right? And that was well known up until, well, I'd say that the name was changed to Iran in 1935. But a lot of people around the world still know them as the Persians, all right? Those are the Elamites of the Bible. That's who they are, the Persians. They're the Elamites of Iran today. So you got Iran, Ethiopia, which is Ethiopia today, Libya, the same, with them, all right? And all these people got beef, man, with the West. All of them got beef with the West. It says, with them, all of them with shield and helmet. So they coming forth to battle too, to join God, the land of Magog. It says Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters and his bands, and many people with thee. It says, be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. All right. And so this is what's going to bring Russia into the valley of Jehoshaphat, because they have deals mainly with Persia here, the Iranians, all right, but also with these other countries, Ethiopia and Libya. Gomer, these are just the different, how would you word it? The different factions of the USSR, the different countries or whatever. These are all countries of Japhet, by the way. All right. But as Esau does, he goes into a man's land and takes it over. And he puts his name on it. All right. But when you actually get into the name Russia, it actually means chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, up in verse 3. It says, and say, thus said the Lord power, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. Now, the way you say chief prince in the Paleo Hebrew is Ra'ash Shar. All right, Ra'ash is head or chief. Shar is prince. So chief prince is Ra'ash Shar. All right. And it's easily to see how over the years, and especially you put an English transliteration on it, it would be Russia. All right. But its actual origins, because that was Japheth's land, but you had some Israelites rule that land after the Edomites stole it. All right. Jake went up in that land, called it Ra'ashar, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. All right. Yeah, so we'll get back. So these are all actual nations or lineage, the nations of the lineage of Japheth, all right, which I believe was Noah's eldest son, all right. You talk about Meshach, Tubal, Gomer, Togomar, all right. Japheth has 7 sons, but um, again, and they had took over. Japheth had settled that land, all right, up north. But again, Esau went into that land, took it over. All right, so now this is concerning the Edomites today. All right, so they all of the USSR is going deep to the Middle East. All right, they going to lay down. All right, a ass whooping. To put it blunt, along with China, yeah, NATO don't have a chance. NATO couldn't even help Ukraine. Can't help Ukraine. NATO can't even pull off a successful proxy. All right. And that's just Russia's B-list military. All right. When they talk about Russia losing these men, that wasn't top men. Now, of course, you know, and that general that just got hit around the holiday, well, shit, well, you know, they just lost a general. Not to say they didn't lose any top guys. They lost top guys, but not to the tune of tens of thousands, you know. But Ukraine has effectively been decimated. All right. So, yeah, verse 6, Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togomar of the north quarters, see, and all his bands and many people with thee. They coming deep to the valley. All right. That's what it's saying. It says, be thou prepared and prepare for thyself. This is to God. Be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee. See, and be thou a guard unto them. So, the Israel thing come into play because, again, Netanyahu is chomping at the bit to get the U.S. to attack, you know, and pretty much demolish the state of Iran. And as mentioned, you go to Jeremiah 49, I believe it's the 20th verse, but let's see, we'll get down to it. All right, this is Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 20. Therefore hear the counsel of Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai that he had taken against Edom and his purposes, that he had purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. Now the least of the flock, all right, biblically speaking, are the Amalekites. Right, the Amalekites. Now, none of the nations today are, very few. This is some, mainly amongst Ham, but most of the nations today don't go by their ancient biblical names. All right. And the ancient biblical name of the Israeli or the so-called Jewish people are the Amalekites. All right. Now they are the least of the flock being referred to here. And the drawing them out is these nations to come to war. All right. So when we read Ezekiel 38, go forth, you know, with thy horses and horsemen and all thy, you know, company, as we just read, these Teman the Amalekites is going to be the one that caused them to go forth. All right. They caused the situation in Ukraine and woke the bear up. But, all right, these moves that's being made in the Middle East right now with these small hatters, the sombrero poquitos, it's going to set off. That's what's going to ignite the third woe. All right. And we all looking for them to provoke Iran, or that's when the stuff is going to hit the fan. All right. When they go at Iran, as we just read, all right, God, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, the Lord set them as a guard to Persia, Ethiopia, Libya. So once they take that offensive against Iran, that's pretty much going to fulfill this prophecy. But then you're going to see them they're going to draw out the opposition. All right. Then the U.S. going to have to come full-fledged, and the beast, all right, that woman and the beast they're going to have to come out of hiding. They're going to have to come out of proxy status and come full-fledged. And then you're going to see a third woe showdown. All right. And we're going to be up out of this bad boy. And to the next one, Shalom.